So with me today, I have an amazing guest, a guy that I've been connected to for a couple of months now through Threads and Instagram. His name is Dominic Castillo. With this conversation, I have a strong feeling that it's going to impact those who really need to hear this message. And so today, Dominic, how are you feeling?
Yo, I'm actually feeling very good. It's like one of those beautiful, like sunny 72-degree kind of days, mornings, I guess, at this point. Um, was with my clients this morning, had a great training session myself, meditated, showered. I'm fresh. You got me good. I got a candle burning. I'm good. I'm in the zone.
You did your whole self-care morning routine.
Right. Yeah. It's one of those. Well, usually Thursdays I take as a super, super light day. So everything I have is like stuff I want to do or stuff I enjoy doing. Um, and so it's kind of an easy kind of flow for it.
That's actually a good start to start this podcast. Is so it's 10 a.m. when we're recording this. You did your gym workout, you did your meditation. Do you have like a daily ritual, morning ritual, or a daily schedule or routine that you have to prime you for the day?
Yeah. Ritual would, I guess that'd be the best way of saying it, but I make a commitment for the last year, specifically for sure the last year, to not interact with people until I'm in a good mood, which that's probably like, beneficial for everybody. Um, but I've learned that like, this first like hour, I was talking to a new client yesterday about this, like the first hour of the day is like yours. Like you have to be completely selfish, and fill into yourself as much as you can. So I always take literally the first like seconds of my morning to like, all right, I'm up. I've decided to get up. 'Cause usually I snooze for like one time. I snooze one time. I give myself permission for that. Then I maneuver like directly into a meditation, which is interesting because the first couple of times I did this, I would fall back asleep. But I think I've trained my body now to like, all right, you're up, you're in this like, was it alpha brain state? I think alpha wave brain
Theta,
state,
like alpha
theta
theta.
wave. Yeah. And it's kind of like ease into that. But I try to make it a strong commitment to put myself in the most like happy would be the only way I could say it, happy mood. And that really just comes out of like, I think if you kind of enter in the, I used to like just wake up, slam a cup of coffee, and then like run into the day. And I think that you kind of let the world happen to you then. Like you kind of then like just become like an NPC and just everything just kind of gets hit at you and you're like getting pissed in traffic, all that kind of stuff. But I've realized that if I can like take the first like hour, if I'm really feeling myself, it'll be like yoga, then meditation, then some journaling. I got into doing like some mirror work. And I was like, all right, this is too much now. Like, like I don't need to give like 90 minutes to like, at some point I have to start the day. But if I'm really kind of in my bag, I would kind of make it a little bit of a strenuous process, but more of a longer process. But right now, definitely just a good 20-minute meditation is kind of what I offer myself, and definitely a cup of water instead of coffee lately, anyway.
Awesome. Since there's a ton of different meditations, what kind or what style of meditation do you practice?
Right. Really it comes into a mixture of just focusing on like mindfulness, breathing, or a visualization kind of thing, like putting yourself like, all right, this is the thing that I see myself working towards. It's a place I want to see myself kind of feeling towards. Lately, I've been kind of playing around with the idea of moving within the year. Not like, I'm kind of telling myself, all right, like next summer, I would like to be in a different like state. I moved to Indiana a year and a half ago, 18 months ago. I like to think of like this place as like my training ground right now. So I was in Indonesia before here, which is kind of a weird like transition to go back and forth. But I think of this as like my little training ground. I'm like, all right, this is where I kind of gain all my chips. I'm here to like learn all my lessons, get my life together in ways, I'm sure we'll get into it later. But I think in about a year or so, I think I'll be ready to like go into like the next like big chapter. I already kind of see like little like the rumblings of it right now kind of emerging. But yeah, so right now it's just like imagining, not even really a location, but like it's just a feeling like I want it to feel like this morning, honestly. Like that's why I was like kind of able to like really tap into the morning feeling. I'm like, oh yeah, 75 degrees, beautiful, like crisp wind, the sun's hitting the buildings the right way. This is what I want it to look like next year, wherever I'm at. Community, being with like certain friends that make me feel good early in the morning. I always like have a bit of an intention that this is kind of a little bit more like aesthetic driven, but I like bigger windows. I'm like, I need to have windows that shine light into. So it's always like kind of putting those little cues. I always tell, I was telling a friend this yesterday, it's like rehearsing. It's like, all right, I want to rehearse what I know it's going to feel like and be like. So when it happens, I'm like, oh, that's the one. That's the one I've been seeing. That's the place I've been kind of like feeling into my body lately. Yeah, but so between usually mindfulness or some type of visualizations, I say lucky. I mean, I'm not sure if it's really lucky or not. To not really need guided meditations anymore. I think I spent the first couple years kind of like leaning on that, which is I think a great like tool to use if you're like if you're if you have a hard time kind of allowing your mind to like zone in. Guided meditations are really good for that. Um, but I've been really happy to just like kind of really just ease into it. I think that's why it's better to do it first thing in the morning because like there's nothing. It's just the first thought is meditations, or you're kind of like an extended sleep person.
I know exactly what you're talking about, and awesome. It's like when you're describing that future self, 75 and sunny and big windows. I don't know why, but for me, like I pictured San Diego for some reason. That's it's like low 70s, mid 70s all year round. It's such a beautiful place. I haven't been there in a couple years. Um, so speaking on that visualization process, what is different about that person, that identity that person has for you in the future, that is different than you currently, or is it the same person and time just has to go by?
Yeah, yeah. Honestly, I this past year has been like the biggest, probably one of the more notable jumps in my life. Last year was really difficult in a lot of different ways. So like to see like this big shift from like that person to like where I'm at now, I'm like, oh, something happened. Like something literally like on a biochemical level, like shifted into my body or my mind. So like when I think about the future kind of going in, I kind of feel like I've entered into like the first stage of like the best version of myself, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So I think kind of leaning into like that's why I kind of think of like India as like my training grounds. I'm like, oh, okay, I was here to like see that really kind of diabolical version of myself before, and then work to really like remedy, heal. Maybe I guess would be a good word. A lot of those like traits and aspects to a point where I can like take the next step forward in like that I'd call like actualized version of myself, emotionally, mentally, spiritually for sure. Um, what was your question again? What was it? I have to make sure I actually answered it. What was the question?
I was just saying, it's like, what is different from that future version of you than it is currently for you to actualize that visualization that you're feeling?
Yeah, I think there's dynamically there is an audacity possibly, being a little bit more audacious to like just jump into certain things, maybe without the thinking of it. I've noticed that whenever I let my mind kind of like tell me to do things, it becomes a little bit more of a strenuous battle, becomes like a little bit more of a perfectionism, rather when I'm like, all right, let's just go off of the emotion of something. Let's just go off the, um, I guess, spark of doing something. It becomes a little bit more easy. It becomes like flow. If anything, that's what I'm learning most, is to like if it's not, and people get mad when I say this, but I'm like, if it's not easy, I don't want it. And I don't mean easy as in like, it needs to just be like, not work or anything like that, but there needs to be the obstacles don't need to be as, like, those walls don't need to be as high. Because sometimes a no is a full sentence, like, no, don't do that. You don't have to combat the no because it's what you think is supposed to be like what you're doing. It's like, no, it's a no because that's the guardrail. It's putting you back on track. Um, it's funny because I had this experience literally yesterday. I had an opportunity, and it's why I'm like I need to stay in India another year. Um, had an opportunity to go to Chicago. It literally happened yesterday. Oh, no, it happened 2 days ago, for a job, and they wanted me to relocate there in like 3 or 4 weeks. And I was like, damn, that's like 3 or 4 weeks. Like, I want me to uproot everything I have going on here right now, my clients, my work, and like just even just the idea of getting a new house and all that kind of stuff. I was like, Dom, you can do that and you can make that choice, but you know that like that doesn't necessarily feel like right now. Especially with like the things you kind of have already moving and the people you're helping here, the people you're serving. So I was like, a different me would have been like, go immediately, jump on it, go for the thing, try to get the shiny new object. But I feel really like composed and saying like, you know what, this opportunity isn't the right one. But what it tells me is that opportunities are like coming, opportunities are like running towards you because it kind of just presented itself very like abruptly. I almost leave it like a little pop quiz. It's cause well, full disclosure about me, I used to have a very impulsive type of behavior. Um, Hence the Indonesia, while I was living there. And I've learned over some time that like it's good to just kind of let settle a little bit. Since I was maybe 18 years old, I'm 33 now. I've probably lived. I've lived in the same house, the same place, more than like 18 months. Like I mean, I was in the military and then going to school and then just pandemic stuff. It's just been like a constant like shift. And sometimes it's been really good. And sometimes it's been really impulsive. I'm like trying to split the difference between like, when is it like a full body, yes, I'm supposed to be doing this, versus like, I don't like where I'm at right now. So I need to shift, maybe, force things to happen, versus just like going through the river and letting it take you where it needs to go. That's been like a little bit of the internal monologue um, into this variation of myself, I guess I could say.
So would you say that you are more tapped into living life through your feelings or your thoughts? Because it seems like there's a pretty balanced, from my perspective on the outside looking in from hearing you, it's like you came from a heavily thinking lifestyle to where, like you said, the impulse and the just go, but now you're trying to ease back a little bit and get more into like your feelings. Does that seem pretty accurate?
100. Yeah, 100%. I mean, and what's funny, that's like, I think that's the journey of a man. I think all men, we go from like the thinking and that's like kind of learn to feel more. I mean, I don't know, that I think that's just the chemistry of masculinity. Um, but I would definitely think in terms of gaining more practices and wellness, it just teaches you to feel more, it teaches you to stay present, it teaches you to, I always like to say like, your mind is in the future, your body's in the present. No, I said that backwards. Your mind is in the past, your body's in the present, and your spirit's in the future.
Hmm.
So it's always like having to like learn to sway between those things. And a lot of times, your mind only understands a depiction of the past. It's like, all right, don't do that again because remember last time. Do that again because remember last time. See what that person has. This is what you need to do to get what they're at. And I think that oftentimes, if you let your mind always do that, you're always just trying to recreate things. You're trying to uh, remember. You're just trying to like, I don't know. It becomes like a real spiral versus like allowing yourself to kind of step into unknown things a little bit more, feel into things a little bit more. Which actually, that's what got me into. That's like the basis of my philosophy of fitness. Like, allow your brain to kind of like settle down a little bit, and let your body start to like kind of take control. Let your body kind of stay rooted. Let your body stay present. Actually, feel what it is to breathe. Feel what it is to like feel. I think I coach at a solid core as well, and what's got me into like that workout the most is just complete mind body connection, because I'm not sure if you've ever done Pilates or done like that kind of strength training. I totally recommend it if you haven't. But it's such like an agonizing like burn in your body. You have nothing to do besides just like feel into it. You have nothing to do besides just like go. It's like this constant like conversation with yourself of resilience. All right, one more, the next one. Your body's like under like like isn't having these like involuntary responses, and it's such like a cool like experience to see people experience. It's a cool like vibe to see people experience that, because they're kind of battling themselves while they're like looking in the mirror. Yeah, no, but that's like, I mean, I think that's to be like the foundations of like fitness, is being able to just really get a dynamic connection to your body, and then kind of moving forward into like the other levels. I always kind of think like fitness, your body is like the first relationship you have to kind of build is with your body, because it's, you know, obviously it's the present. Then you kind of are able to like kind of dive into what your mind is kind of doing, like the work. People like, you know, kind of say mental health work. And I think that ultimately kind of gets in like this step of like spirituality. It's understanding yourself, you know, actualization, all like the fun stuff we like to kind of hear in the zeitgeist.
Yeah, it's what you said a moment ago, talk about like Pilates and stuff like that. I'm making a prediction because I see Pilates being on like the rise.
Oh, 1 million. Yeah.
From what I see in like the algorithm, um, whenever I come across a random gym reel, it's like, especially for females, it's like the female influencers, the female celebrities, they're really getting into Pilates, and like I don't know much about it on that side of the fitness industry, but to me, it seems like it's like an aggressive yoga style of like working out. It seems really interesting.
Yeah, it's interesting. I had not done Pilates until this year, and solid core is like it's a variation of Pilates. Really, it's more strength training, strength oriented. So you think Pilates is being like these really small like repetitions with like lighter weight. Solid core kind of takes like that ideology, but takes it like with larger like resistance and like variation. So it's like spring load. So it gets harder, obviously, as the spring gets like wider. So it's one of those like constant like battles. You're like it's just burns the entire time. Uh, come to Indy, take my class, and we'll make this work.
So, would you classify as like a high intensity interval training style workout, or is it slightly
mm.
different?
Solid core.
Yeah, or yeah.
It's marketed and described as high intensity, low impact.
Oh, okay, so it's slightly different.
Yeah. So if you think of like boxing or think of like berries or stuff like that, it's really hard on the joints. It's like plyometric. It's like jumping. It's high impact. But when it comes to like Pilates, yoga, all that kind of stuff, it's like definitely like a lower impact. What's really good though is like for me, again, like 33. As soon as I turn 30, which people say this all the time, like your joints do like just start to do things differently. And I'm the kind of guy that's taken a lot of like I've invested a lot of care into my body, but even then I'm like, oh, I see I see the wear and the tear. It's starting to come in with my shoulders, with my hips. And I've noticed with my workouts, it's like, all right, now there has to literally be a warm up section and a mobility section. Where in the past it was just like treadmill for 5 minutes.
Hmm.
Now it's like, all right, you got to, you know, lubricate the joints of like your shoulders, understanding what it is actually. You have an internal burn to your body, actually doing some type of mobility work, like long term, and actually using that as like a strong form uh, for my workouts going forward. What kind of training do you do?
I do like a 6 day workout. It's like a push pull legs. Then I do that, run through that twice a week. Then it's like on the seventh day, I just do like an extended walk. Or if I never do it, but the intention is always to do like a really nice like yoga stretch or like a full body stretch to stay loose and mobile. I never do it, but I really want to. Um, but that's basically how it goes now.
You'll get to a point where like I have to do this.
I mean, I'm 24 now, and probably since I was 21, due to like sports growing up, like I'm already making the dad noises coming out of the chairs. So it's
That
like,
is funny.
I get it,
Yeah,
I get it.
right, right.
Yeah, it would probably be suggested that I take care of my body now, best as I can to prevent the pain and suffering later on.
I,
Um,
I like to always tell a lot of my clients are like executives, or they work like in I guess higher spaces. And I one thing I've always noticed with them is that after like years and years of like investing in like their careers, it's been at a there's like this weird like line that like the further they get into their careers, like the higher um, the degradation of their bodies, just from like not caring for it, like, you know, kind of sitting in like static positions for a long time. And there's like this about this sweet spot about like 47 to 50 or so, or 55, I guess, where there's like this realization of like, oh, I've made all this money, but my body feels like shit. Where's the wealth? Where's the abundance of actually living now? And even with my parents, like my mom at first was like really like against my like traveling, like my extensive travel. But as she's gotten like older, she's like, it makes sense. I'm glad that you're doing this now, because like when you get to, you know, 50, 60, like your body just doesn't have that kind of like mobility to be able to do it in the same way. or you don't have the energy to really do it in the same way. So it was like this weird investment of life where you're like meant to use all this energy when you're young, to work and to like build and to create and cultivate. But there still has to be like this really hard investment in like quality of life and actually understanding life and actually being able to create memories to where you actually can reflect and just, say that you've done things in a way that's worth it versus just like giving, building, and sharing all the time.
Yeah, continuing on that, I see like a lot of older people. Like there's a book that came out. It's a very popular book. It's like Top Five Regrets of the Dying, and it's like I probably at least once, twice a week. Like I visualize like my future self. Let's just say I'm 85, 100. You know, I'm trying to extend my lifespan as long as I can, being healthy and stuff. But it's like looking back. It's gonna call it like Solomon's paradox is like the idea of it. It's like when you're 85 or 100 and you're looking back on your life, what should you be doing, or what would you want to be doing during like, this lifetime? And when you're talking about like the CEOs, executives, like the higher up people in the corporate world and in businesses, a lot of them sacrifice like their health or they sacrifice relationships. Um, for me, right now, there was a book I was introduced to a couple years ago that's really made an impact on me called The Game of Life and How to Play It. I think it was released about 100 years ago by an author named Florence Scovel Shinn. And she sees life divided into the four pillars, which most people know the big three, but they forget the fourth one, which is you got health, wealth, relationships, and she adds in self expression, which could be like your work or just how you express yourself to the world on a daily basis through creativity, through art, music, whatever. What is your relationship to like the balance between all four of those? Like, is there seasons where it's like, okay, I really need to work on my relationships in my 20s and 30s or 50s, 60s, or is it for you? Do you think it's best to find flow and balance all year round between all four of those things?
Right, right. Hmm. It, I think it really comes into what you're kind of like saying is like what's like a philosophy to build off of that. Um, I I think every person's obviously gonna have a different experience with that depending on like their circumstance. Like if you're in poverty, I grew up, not in the most abundant home.
Same
um,
here.
so like you obviously want to create some type of stability. You want to create some type of like quality in your life. And if that's not given to you, it's kind of one of those things. Creating equity is really what it kind of is. And if you're at a detriment of like the quality of your life in that standpoint, in terms of like home, wealth, money, all that kind of stuff, work towards building that. If you grew up in a life where your relationships, your parents, you don't have good relationship with your parents or like good relationship with your family, then maybe it's one of those things where you have to kind of like dive into doing that more. But it's all going to be about creating equity. So I guess, yeah, what you're saying in terms of creating a balance. But sometimes people are kind of like just born in circumstances where you're not going to have that off the bat. So it's going to be a huge like detriment kind of going forward. I always think of like those like memes or those images where it's like the difference between like equality and equity. See like it's like little people on like the 1, 2, and 3, and like
Mm-hmm.
looking over a fence,
Yep,
and it's like
I know exactly
equity.
what you're talking about.
Yeah, well. So it's like everybody's gonna have to be born in a different space, whatever it is. So it's like having to create that equity. So then, or it gets a baseline essentially, and then from there, once you actually get to a baseline, you then can actually look at, all right, well, now that I'm back to zero with all these things, where is it that I actually want to put a little bit more focus on? Um, but I think once you actually get to that spot, like you again start to build a little bit more of a philosophy of life. Um, Again, like in your 20s, you probably should be like doing a little bit more building, creating, understanding. But at the same time, you should be like going back to the book that you were saying. There should be like an understanding of like your expression, actually understanding how you feel things, understanding like how you're able to emote things. Um, I think empathy probably is a one of those kind of things that a lot of guys don't, and that's kind of a classic thing to say. I guess like guys don't feel, but it's one of those things that I think that maybe we're not encouraged to really dive into as much as kids or as young boys, whatever. Um, I mean, I think that would probably be the biggest one to be real, because most guys are going to be like kind of told like, all right, go make your money, go make go have a strong body. But then when it comes like your relationships and when it comes like your expression, that's going to be a place where they're not encouraged. So you're gonna have to kind of seek out the information. You're gonna have to actually understand like what it is to be at a detriment of that, and then fill in the gap. But if you don't have any like kind of what's the word, self self inquiry, you can't really get that point. You know what I'm saying? If you don't have like moments of like reflection, if you don't have moments of like pause to be like, am I happy? And what's weird, I guess, like in a spiritual way, people call that like your Saturn return. Like when you're 27, and there's like this. I guess historically, there's like this space of reflection in your life. We kind of almost like take this big like audit. Like, do I want to do this? I'm graduating college. Do I want this career? Um, I'm not sure if every person has that, I guess, or if it always happens at 27. But I do think like that kind of moment of like deep reflection where you actually kind of, before you actually are completely invested into something that's like maybe irreversible, um, is important, because then it kind of puts you back to like the direction that you're intended to be on. Um, yeah, kind of a long answer, I guess, to get to that.
Yeah, I kind of hit that phase, like the Saturn's return of what you mentioned at age 18, because I went to college for one semester. Then I was doing fine in college. The college was fine. I was going for exercise science because I was a big sports fan. It made the most sense. The major sounded really cool. But when I was asked to start scheduling classes for the next semester, I'm like, oh, then the next 4 years, because I have to schedule the right classes. I'm like, do I really want to do this? And it's like that's why I did like my self inquiry, and I really looked into like my future self. I'm like, I don't. I looked at every other major, minor, whatever in college, and nothing sounded right. Plus, I was going through some of like the deepest, darkest moments of my own personal life from what I was feeling on the inside, which was very briefly like self-diagnosed as heartbroken and introverted, extremely introverted, depressed and anxious, and a lot of those emotions. And I get that. I get that phase. Exactly what you're just talking about. One word that you have mentioned a couple of times during this interview so far is actualize. What is your definition and understanding of someone doing the activity or just being self-actualized?
Mm, I think that's one of those things that's it's like the goal that you're never going to reach. You know what I'm saying? Until you're dead, until you've like shifted out of like this vessel. Um, but it's like the destination. You're always trying to kind of get 1% better. That kind of theology. Um, but actualization to me is how much of a comprehension of yourself are you willing to expose yourself to? Like how much can you fold in and continue to fold in to get a little bit deeper? Um, and how are you able to like take these audits, again, going back to like self inquiry, to then kind of come back with a new perspective. Um, I mean, I think that should be the goal of life. Like that's just and I think I probably realized that maybe around 27, I guess 27 or so. That's when my life really went to shit. Or in terms of like having to really just pull the parachute and like, all right, I got to get out of this situation altogether. Post military, all that kind of stuff. Like, I need to get out of this now. Um, then you start to like, all right, there needs to be a different perspective. I think that's when like that spiritual awakening starts to happen. Um, for me anyway, on a very like small level, like how can I feel better? How can I eat better? Maybe I should work out more. Maybe I should move my body. How can I move my body in a different way? And you start to like kind of ask yourself these questions rather than like getting told what to do. You kind of like ask yourself, what kind of life do I want to create around me? How can I be the main character in this story rather than um, being just a, you know, NPC, I guess is the word, in somebody else's story or in the greater narrative. Um, yeah, but no, actualization is like the bread and butter. I think that's what everybody should be kind of resourcing to. with every choice they're making, with every move they make, with every job they take, with every book they read. That's not saying that you have to be like obsessed with like this getting better, getting better, getting better. But there should be like even like the idea of like your leisure. Like, okay, I need to rest now because my body needs to recover. It needs a regeneration portion. I need to have more loving relationships. Maybe I need to have more sex. Maybe I need less sex. I mean, anything like that, just to kind of like step into like this different variation of yourself. It's just really just the idea of questioning yourself and like, does this actually bring this higher level of awareness to my life?
Yeah, what are some of those questions when you're doing self inquiry that you personally ask yourself to get you from those dark moments of your life to lead you to the path of where you are now?
It isn't necessarily a question, but more so it's almost like a tertiary voice inside of you. And it's like,
Hmm.
oh, I wouldn't, it's like the this is going to be a very personal one. But I struggled with an addiction to porn for a long time, post military. And throughout that 7 year process of sorts, I always would hear like a voice inside me be like, well, we're still here. It's always like a subtle, like suggestive, like, well, I probably wouldn't do that. And just, you kind of like lean into it. It's always loving. It doesn't ever feel like judgmental. It's like, okay, you're choosing to do this. That's fine. But there's like that little like hint of a voice. It's like there's things you could be doing other than this. But at the same time, like it's also being nurturing to yourself to say like, you know what, better answer than saying this. It's almost like there's a voice inside saying like, if this is what's going to help you right now, use it. You don't have anything else. We know there is better things to do, but right now this is what you're feeling. This is you going from a level 0 to 1% better. Theoretically we want to get you to 50 or more higher, but right now this is the best tool you have. If porn is the best like thing you have to actually go from depression to sadness, just sadness, then go for it. But when you're ready to like expose yourself a little bit to like that whatever that feeling that's really keeping you down, um, then you can stop and kind of like build it. But if you don't have the energy or the willpower to sustain it yet, then use the thing that's gonna buy you some time. I was talking to a friend some time ago. This was some months ago, I guess, and they brought up a good variation of that and saying like sometimes like alcohol is the only thing that's keeping people alive. It's either alcohol or suicide. And I was like, yo, be grateful for the alcohol. That alcohol is a blessing. That drug use is your blessing then, because it's the tool you have in your tool belt to keep you alive. You can't judge that. Don't let anybody else judge it for you.
Yeah, what I notice with people who are in that like that space of where it's like alcohol or death, just unfortunately, most people I would say are just so unaware of alternatives and like uh putting the ego aside to actually do things to actually help them. It's like a balance or one or the two. It's like a lot of guys don't even know meditation is a concept. Like I'm using meditation like some like holistic wellness practices. Like there's thousands of them you can choose from journaling to meditation and doing this and that. Going fitness is one of them. I take a bold stance that's like it's hard to be depressed while also being fit because I don't know what it is, but there is a very interesting relationship between me and my best friend. Whenever we work out and when we don't work out, we always check and we have like weekly calls because we live a couple hours away, and we always ask each other like, "Hey, you been going to the gym?" We ask that question specifically because if one of us haven't been in the gym for longer than a week, then we know something our mental health drastically immediately declines. Like we feel depressed, we start resorting to whether it's alcohol or uh, taking in a lot of caffeine or where our relationships start to dwindle. Um, how has that been basically? Like we measure each other on like, hey, you going to the gym? Because it's like that really is like one of our things that we have together where it's like if this isn't in check, a lot of other things fall out of balance really quickly, really negatively. How has for you, because it's like for people who are listening or watching this right now, if you go on Dom's Instagram page, this dude's jacked. He's ripped. He talks the talk and he definitely shows it. How has fitness and working out been for you, mentally and emotionally?
Mm. I think mentally, it's been one of those things of, at one point it was a distraction. You know, there were things in my life that I didn't want to face, emotionally, actually. Like post military, the reason why the porn thing came up, I suffered like from a post traumatic stress disorder from my first deployment, and that was like a just a huge like deterrent in my life. And fitness was the healthy tool that I could use to like, all right, let me get out of the house and go to the gym. Let me like get, just do something to move my body, something that can like I could spend an hour or two a day, sometimes 3 hours, um, just to like at least put forth good effort, and that habit kind of like just built and built and built and built, and it became like just a foundation of my life, to a point where it's like you don't. But I honestly say like the first like maybe 3 or 4 years when you're lifting, you don't know what you're doing. You're just kind of like messing around, kind of picking things up, putting them back down. Um, but there'll be a point in time if you don't like focus on like results. I always say like if you don't really just like put your whole worth of fitness and just getting results and just actually go through the process of like just feeling better, there'll be a point in time where you look in the mirror, it's like, damn, I look fucking fantastic. And then, and then there'll just be like this, it just switches over. And it's like this emotional, like, oh, I'm just a fit person. I'm just a well person. And I think that's kind of the proof you then need to be like, it just kind of steamrolls into other things. Well, if I could do this with my body, then what can I do with my mind? Let me actually have some energy to look at some of the more dysfunctional mindset patterns I have. Let's try meditation. Let's try this meditation stuff. Since this fitness thing worked, maybe everybody talking about meditation. Let's get into that. And I think that you start to like kind of stack up these like positive like aspects of yourself, and it starts to then overshadow like the negative ones. Um, this year, it's been like a giant step that I took was to step into celibacy. It's been like 5 months, I think. Mind you, this is something that I've wanted to do like for years, but it's just like it just always felt like a huge like task. I was like, all right, not for me now. I'm doing it. But something clicked this year, where I was like, Dom, you could do it. You've done so much already this year that that just wasn't a reality last year. Um, Take it even further. Take it to the next level. Take it to the next level. And I think you kind of have like that same kind of voice that's like in your mind. It always kind of wants you to push a little bit further. I think once you start to stack those things in your favor, that voice gets a little bit louder. It kind of like leans into it. It's like the better version of yourself, and it's like your cheerleader. It's like your hype man or whatever. And I don't know. I think I can't deny that I'm in the better version of myself. When I mean, going back to like actualization, I think that's what it is. You go for like from that 0 to 1, and if it's alcohol that takes you from 0 to 1, that's fine. And then you go from like your 1 to your 2, and if that's, I don't know, junk food, I don't know, like eating more, just eating food in general, that's 1 to 2. And then you discover like, let me try this. You kind of stumble on a better habit. Let's try meditation. And that 2 goes to an 8. You're like, oh, I'm at an 8 now. Like, let me keep this meditation stuff. Let me forget this junk food and all this other stuff. And you're like, I'm gonna start working out. Then you go 8 goes like to 30, and it just kind of like stacks you. But you have to kind of like get your tools to be able to like take those like next levels. And sooner or later, you're gonna be on this path of like actualization of sorts. It's kind of like compounds on itself. It's just stacks in your favor. What were you saying?
Yeah, you said something really interesting, which I really want to point out. So, a few moments ago, you're talking about like this is going back to like the alcohol and porn, using that as like a way to express yourself immediately because we both know that you're still avoiding something. And then you also talked about the voice inside of you that's talking about this whole celibacy journey. For me, what it sounds like, the first voice was the voice of ego then this recent voice now perhaps is the voice of, you can call it God, spirit, source. How has your relationship been to this inner voice, and can you differentiate the difference between when you can be aware and recognize that it's the ego talking to you, or it's your higher self or God speaking through you?
I, and hearing you like ask that question, I kind of think that like your ego is there to keep you alive, well, to keep you from dying, maybe is the best way of saying. So like for the alcoholism, porn, like the things that are kind of like bringing you slightly down, but not necessarily like thriving. Um, if they're serving you to like keep you from dying, that's, you know, good, whatever. But I think like that intuitive voice is like the thing that keeps you, that allows you to live. That's kind of a, I said that kind of backwards in a conflated way. So theoretically, like I'm thinking like your ego is the voice that wants to keep you from killing yourself. And at the end of the day, it's like, I'm here to make sure that Dom is alive. I'm here to make sure that Dom makes it to the next day. But then like that intuitive voice is like, not only am I going to make you make it to the next day, I'm actually going to allow you to thrive to the best version of yourself. Um, so I think like, again, leaning into like practices like meditation, it kind of creates like that space. So you can actually kind of listen to it a little bit more. But usually like your ego wants like some kind of immediate gratification to satisfy something today, whether it be your boredom, whether it be like your um, hunger, maybe, I guess, in some ways. But it always has like it needs like validation, like right then and there, you know, versus like your intuitive voice, like your God voice, I guess you could say. Um, it more so is like, you don't get to see as that, you don't get the immediate gratification, but you feel satisfaction on the inside. Like, I'm glad that I um, ate vegetables today. I don't know. I'm glad that I went on that walk this morning. I'm glad that I went to the gym later today. You're not seeing the result like at the end of that product or the end of that action, but there's a satisfaction knowing that like I stepped in the right direction. Let me do it again tomorrow. You know.
Yeah, it's like me summarizing from what how I heard you describe the difference between the two is like ego voice equals survival mechanism, and then intuitive voice within equals thrive. So it's like ego survive, intuitive thrive. Does that sound pretty accurate to how you describe it?
Yeah, there you go. It's always better when you put it like as thread language.
It is. Hey, there's a viral one line post because threads right now it's like those one liners really do go crazy in
They
the
do go
algorithm.
crazy, and it's
If you
always the
spread
ones that
one message
you,
of truth,
yeah, it's
it's
always the
one
ones
one
you kind of
banger.
like, you like flippantly like write. You're like, what? 10,000 likes? What?
Out of
From
nowhere, it's
this?
like 5 words. It's like five
Yeah,
words. It's like I put like a whole paragraph and I wrote an entire
exactly.
thread article of like, okay, how to actually something that's really important. But I said
Right,
God is good, 5 million likes or something like that. Or it's
right,
like
right, right,
I
right,
woke up
right.
and I'm happy today. It's something
Yeah,
silly and
yeah,
goofy.
yeah, yeah. It's true.
So something that um I also wanted to talk to you about is what is your understanding, relationship, and experience of like the terms it's can go two different routes, but it's like men and like masculinity. What do you see like the balance between the two? Like what's like the role of each one and how does that play into the actual reality of this world?
That's a heavy question.
It's a very heavy question. I dropped that one on you.
Yeah, that's a big one. Mm, I mean, masculinity. I mean, when you read about masculinity, it always is about the doing. It's always about the thinking. It's always about the action. Um, it's the yang of the yin and yang. So it's like it's definitely the part of the whole. And then when you couple men with that, you know, it's kind of, I guess, it's like that a home base for it in a way. But I do think there's a big um, separation between the two in the same way that women and femininity do. I will have. Um, I like to really, in a weird way, like to, if you're familiar with the Kinsey scale, are you familiar with that? It's like the range of
I
like
I don't.
it's like the range of like heterosexuality, homosexuality, bisexuality. It's like a continuum of sorts. So like everybody lives
I,
on this
I didn't know that was
continuum
a
of the
thing.
Kinsey scale.
So
Oh
how
yeah,
does
it's
that
really
work?
cool.
Is it what's like the you said there's like three different topics there, like three different measuring things. How is that? Like what's on the left, what's in the middle, what's on the right?
Yeah, so you could look at like homosexuality would be on, let's say, the left, and then
Okay,
heterosexuality would be on the right, bisexuality would be in the middle somewhere.
makes
And
sense.
it's like this like ever-ending like continuum, like where does that person lean on towards their sexuality? I do think that if you like take it a step forward further, there would be like an axis to be on top of it. So like you have your
Hmm.
sexuality on side to side, and then you put like your masculinity and your femininity on it too, to kind of cross, like make that T form.
Yep.
And I think that that's where people should live into more rather than just exclusively identifying with like just a sexual, characterization, but actually kind of pair that with like a masculine, feminine kind of, I guess, energy would be the best way of saying it. But also like understanding like that's like all fluid at the same time. So like, you know, and also like not even the fluidity, but actually understanding like what those aspects are for yourself. So like, I mean, I think that I have a natural masculinity that I think people actually presume me as more masculine than probably what I come off as or than what I view myself as. Um, I mean, I do think of myself as like much more sensitive, but I don't think that a lot of men particularly want to, I don't know, acknowledge that side maybe. Would you say that for yourself? Would you ever describe yourself as like emotional, sympathetic, empathetic, soft even? Like, is that
Honestly, like I am strongly on the heterosexual side of that scale, but I identify strongly as someone who is creative. So it's like like my identity I would say is pretty good on the scale of like the feminine energy. It's like and it's an interesting balance that I'm still discovering through myself.
right? Well, I think that's what it is too. Is like you, that's what makes the scale like a fun thing. Is you get to like understand like aspects of yourself, and also like just at different ages. Like me at 22 in the military, going to war, I was like completely bought in on this like idea of masculinity, this idea of expressing my power, and always like walking around with that and looking for validation in that too. I need my awards, give me my decorations, where are my trophies, where's my uniform? It needs to have the most, you know what I'm saying? Like, just, I need to be the most decorated veteran here, all that kind of stuff. And it's like, yo, chill. It's like, as you get older, it's kind of like that. I don't need to, like, I don't need an external, I don't need an external validation for someone to understand like my value. I think that I'm not sure if that is a feminine trait or if that's just a comfortability in someone's masculinity. Um, but I do think that there has to be a conversation to show yourself a lot of your personal worth, to kind of like go back to that self inquiry, like look at like your life as a almost like a slideshow, and kind of I had told a lot of clients too, like, yo, collect all of your like your brain obviously does this for you naturally, but collect like all of your highlights, your best things about yourself, and put that shit on a fucking replay. Remember that time where you won, you slid in the home base in Little League, whatever, like that fire moment, whatever it is. Like, give yourself that proof whenever you're at the gym, when you lift at like that, lift a heavy weight, whatever it is. Give yourself that proof, like, oh, I know what it feels like to win. I know what it feels like to have like resilience, whatever it is, and not have to look for like external validation from that, like from the world around you. Just give it to yourself, because you've only shown yourself that you've won. You've only shown yourself that you're able to thrive. You've only shown yourself you're able to like survive. But on the flip side, I think a lot of people do the opposite of that. They're like, oh fuck, remember that time in the fifth grade when I called Jamie's little sister ugly? Why was I so, like, I don't know, whatever. And they kind of beat themselves up for like being mean, or maybe being like a bad person, toxic person, whatever it may be. Um, or maybe even like, other kind of like ideas that maybe can permeate like masculinity of sorts. But yeah, no, I guess going back to what your question is, like men and masculinity, I think it's an evolving kind of thing that it has to come from maybe it starts from a external source, but I do think it has to kind of like learn to be a internal appreciation, internal validation of sorts.
Do you think that is set in stone or does it develop? Because for me, it's definitely rapidly like changing. A couple years ago, speaking on the same topic of masculinity, um, in the doing phase, it's like, and also what you just mentioned about like the highlight reel, David Goggins in the space,
Yeah,
veteran as well, very, very, very masculine energy of just doing the hard things, resilience, fighting, pushing through, surpassing limits. He coined, I think he coined the phrase. I could be wrong. He could got it from someone else, but he calls it like his cookie jar, which is that I think it's physical. It's like you get like sticky notes or index cards, and you write like the most badass things that you've done, like you've surpassed like that insurmountable obstacle in your life, and you put it into an actual cookie jar. And like whenever you're doubting yourself, or you're like in that space where it's like you can't trust yourself, reach in that cookie jar and just remind yourself, be into that feeling of it all. But that was me like a couple years ago, and now like this past like year and a half, I've really delved deeply into like this whole spirituality space where my energy has shifted from that doing phase to more being. And I was getting too far into the being to where I was spiritually bypassing and just um, not supporting myself in my relationship with my girlfriend and doing a lot of other things. Finances became started to become a problem and other things, and like it's like now me doing my self inquiry very recently. It's like what who do I want to be for like the rest of my life? That's a very grand thing to ask. And for me, like the idea of like how I would want to live my life, it's interesting because it can be a balance between the masculine and feminine. Because it's like I would like to be a polymath, or what you call like a modern Renaissance man, which is someone who is gifted in many different realms or many different spaces of reality, fitness, artists, like people who like I look up to for inspiration is like someone like Shaq, of like how he became an athlete, and then also like he's kind of comedy. Now he's a DJ. Now he's a talk show host. Like he's done a lot of amazing things. Same thing with The Rock. Was a WWE wrestler, was a college football player. Now he's an actor. He's a singer. If you look back in like history, like 100 years ago, there's many of them where people like a lot of people don't know this name. Yeah, like what's his name? Terrence Howard just made him go viral. Walter Russell, where he was a sculptor, he's an author, he's a scientist, philosopher, uh, champion of ice skating. It's like those in itself, like art is described as feminine, but you need to do those things, which is masculine. So it's like me moving forward, it's going to be a really interesting balance of being and doing, flowing between wisdom and love and going through with that lifestyle. So it's like, do you, where's I headed with that question? It's like, with the whole term of like masculinity and men, and it could depend on like that individual person. It's like, is it set in stone or is it meant to be fluid and change throughout the rest of your life?
for sure. No, for sure. I mean, just like maturity and I mean immaturity to maturity of anybody's age, like the way you view masculinity as a boy is going to be way different than when you view masculinity as like a father or grandfather.
Mm.
Like it's going to have a full different perspective. It might look like more service than gratification, but I do think that it like if you allow yourself to have the same action as a 11-year-old when you're 33, or you're still having the same chasing the same type of gratification, and that probably is like a stunt in how you're actually evolving in your masculinity. Um, yeah, for sure. No, I mean, and what you're saying in terms of like being able to create and cultivate, there has to be a little bit of a um, my client Matt hates this, but there has to be a bit of a surrender to yourself, a little bit, and a little bit of a surrender to the femininity, like to allow it to kind of like move through you. That's where you get like ideas. That's where you get like passion. That's where you get like the fervor to like do things in a bigger way, um, rather than always relying on like brute power. Um, like you can I don't know, like it's like doing a deadlift. Like you can't deadlift everything. Like sometimes you have to have a little bit more of an emotional motivation to do it rather than just like brute force. You know,
Yeah,
that's
I
actually
completely understand.
I do like that idea of like a Renaissance man. The idea of whenever I think one thing that's really dope about life is that if you're able to like look back at it, there should be like clear chapters. This is me when I did this. This is me when I
Yeah.
did that. Remember that time? And those people should almost be unrecognizable to each other. Um, that's why I mean, I like to think that if you're doing life right, you should be dying over and over and over and over. There should be like a new version that's like coming out. Like the person's in the military, the person that was living in New York, the person that was studying Hinduism in Bali. Like these people shouldn't be, they should almost be unrecognizable to each other, but so cool the fact that it's the same person. That's the thread that's like pulling you forward. And that's what gives you the perspective of life that's like unlike anybody else.
It's like the same physical body, but every 5 or 10 year high school reunion, someone has no idea who you are.
Who is this? Hey, well, you're 24, so you haven't been to your high school reunion yet.
Yeah, my class, a lot of people have like a 5 year reunion every 5 years, but it's like my class, we didn't set anything up, so maybe on the 10 year, I'd go, but I bet, because that's like I'm not in contact with more than like 3 or 4 people from like my class or like my school in general, so it's like that was a story, as you said, a chapter in my life. But before we go, one last question is: what's something that's been deeply within you, like another voice that's inside of you that you feel the need to express to the world? Whether it's like a philosophy, whether it's a statement, it could be controversial or it could be very heartfelt. Not that those two are different, but what's something that you feel the need that the world needs to hear in this day and age? It could be your favorite quote. It could be a resource. It could be a practice. Whatever. What comes to you, like internally, that you feel the need to express?
I think that there's should be an undying mission for love. Maybe that would be the if actualization is the goal, the mission is love. If that makes sense. And those two are like in tandem: love of self, love of the world around you, love of your community. I think if you always move from like those aspects, you're always going to be in a receiving mode. You're always going to be in a grounded mode. Um, and I guess you'd always be in an abundant mode too, because like if you're always seeing love in the eyes of others, like there's no room for to tear somebody down. There's no room to like break them. You only see the aspects of them that you see in yourself, and I guess that's really the mirror that you're trying to like create. Um, Oftentimes, whenever like fear is like the thing that people are maneuvering from, it's a separation. It's a separation from me to you. But when I see love in somebody else's eyes, you're seeing the best aspects of yourself. So, and I guess in the vice versa, when you see fear in someone else's eyes, you're seeing the things you hate about yourself.
So, would you further say that or suggest that it's unconditional love rather than just like the word love? Because I think a lot of people differentiate the two. It's like there's love, you can love someone, but you still have conditions for them. So, would you say it's unconditional, or is there a different answer?
See, that's such an interesting that's an interesting parallel of it because I think love is unconditional, but I think when you love somebody, it doesn't mean that you are sustaining something that's painful to yourself.
Hmm.
Like just because you're a loving parent that has a son that is doing harm to themselves all the time, your love doesn't mean that you're there's a difference between love and then trying to take care of somebody, like just because you're trying to always give at your own detriment. You can still love that person and not do those things. Or because if you choose to put somebody in a circumstance that maybe it's for their good and that they don't want to be there, um, it's still love. I mean, I have clients every day that I'm sure that they don't enjoy doing the things they want to do, but I do love them. I do care for them, and I do understand that it's like hey, like this is the conditioning portion of your life. This is the flexed portion of your life. And this is for you to actually kind of go within so you could go without better. You know what I'm saying? And that's just
Yes,
like kind of
that's
like
lovely.
constant like cycle in a way.
That is lovely. Thank you for sharing that. Dom, where can people go that have listened to this episode or watched it here on YouTube? Where can people go to help support you or contact you or find your work?
Yeah, yeah. I have recently, this year, well, this past summer, I guess, dived more into Threads. Such a dope. Such a dope app. I think that
That's how we
it's
met.
like, yeah, it's the app that everybody's talking about that no one's using. Well, no, a lot of people are using, but like, you know what I'm saying? It's like in comparison to like other apps, um, Threads is such a cool like community of minds, and I don't know. I always wanted to use Twitter, but I was like, this is feels like it just felt like such a I don't know if heavy in a weird way. But no, I definitely love Threads at the Dom Castillo. Same with Instagram. I'm looking to build more communities, more with men. Um, I always do work in the sovereignty of men, um, whether it be physically, whether it be through mindset work, mental health, and of course, like spiritual awareness. Those are like the goals that I continuously like cycle myself through. That's like my North Star. All right, is this going to be at a benefit or a detriment of the guys that I work with, community I work with, um, myself? But yeah, follow me at the Dom Castillo.
And all of those links that Dom just mentioned will be in the show notes, in the description. So be sure to click on those and find him there. And thank you once again for this interview, this conversation that we just had. I can't wait to go through this and edit and really absorb the information that you have shared and take notes and spread that wisdom and love back to the world. So once again, thank you, Dom.
I appreciate you.